Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
When I got home, I was totally opposite of what the in-place government wanted at that time.
So the military and police are buying that Bush was a fake right wing and it was all staged, and that's what the intel I'm getting. What are you hearing from your military contacts and your police contacts?
Well, on the military side of the house, there's more and more guys who are just saying, it looks like there's going to be a situation at home where we're going to have to do something to survive this thing, and our loyalties are going to be to our families and our communities. It doesn't matter. You can take the a brigade from the 82nd Airborne, and you can send them to some town in the United States and say, maintain order. They'll maintain order. But when you tell them these are the enemies of the nation, and anybody that resists, shoot them, guess what? You're going to have problems. I wouldn't want to be the officer that gave that order because I might see a bunch of M4s turned around in my direction. So I don't think that plan's going to work. The idiots in Washington don't realize that. The idiots in New York City at the UN don't realize that. They think they can make that work. Here's the other side of that coin. They have a backup plan. And just like we talked about before, when General Barry McGaffrey gave the graduation speech to a CASQ class in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas several years ago, he used the term, and he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Stay there. Let's hear about their backup plan and how this is going to flesh out, and then talk about the police, because, of course, you've been a police officer, SWAT team guy, helicopter pilot in the police department, done a lot of detective work, and, of course, in the Army and intelligence before that in the Marines. So you know all these people. We'll talk about it.
Not the whiskey drinking Indian nor the Marine that went to war.
Okay, Colonel Craig Roberts is our guest. We're getting into the military and police. Everything, you see, all these people, like Colonel Roberts himself going back over a decade ago with the syndicated talk show, myself, countless others, warned everybody, laid out what was going to happen. People laughed at us. The ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center lied and tried to demonize people that warned about it. The media tried to do it. But now it's become mainstream. Now it's become just massively mainstream, and the public is now learning about it, and our credibility is shot up. Continue, Colonel Roberts.
Okay, now we were talking about what Plan B was. If our American military doesn't go to, beyond a certain point in enforcing any type of martial law that may be declared. We had this General Barry McGaffrey, who was at that time, I think he was commander of Southcom, and he was at the CASQ graduation of officers in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. That's a course you take before you go to the Command General Staff College. And during his speech, he said that because of the build down of American armed forces, should we be committed to any two fronts overseas? And he didn't say that Korea was a front, but we're already committed in South Korea. Now we're committed in Iraq, and now we're committed in Afghanistan. So there's actually three fronts. And he said that if this should happen, then if we had an emergency situation in the United States that required military intervention, that we would be required or have to call upon foreign assets to patrol our streets. Now, foreign assets, obviously, are foreign troops. Now, we take this and we throw one other thing into the mix, and that's the fact that the Clintons destroyed the military when they were in. They wore out what was left after Desert Storm. They took away the money for maintenance of all of our equipment, airplanes and ships, and then they closed down military bases right and left. And then Bush Jr. comes along, and we end up committed in Iran and Iraq and South Korea and other places around the world to where we stretched the military so thin now we've had to use up the Army Reserve, the Air Force Reserve, the Army National Guard, and so on. We're wearing out the troops that normally would be here as a last resort, and they're being deployed over and over overseas, so there's no one at home to watch the chickens. With that being the case, they're wanting to bring Army brigades back in case of a civil disturbance, civil unrest, whatever, rioting in the streets at the election. We don't know what's going to happen. To use them in case, just like they had to use the 82nd Airborne in Washington D.C. back in the 60s. If they don't do whatever has to be done. In other words, if people take up arms for whatever reason and they don't do that, then they're going to call upon these foreign assets, and we're going to end up with blue helmets creating a target-rich environment out here for everybody that's got a gun. I think that's where this thing's going. I think it's been set up for a long time. It's not going to surprise me if that happens, and I know the police and the military both are looking at this as a very realistic possibility.
Well, let's talk about that, but look at the conditioning. UN troops over the last decade helping with forest fires, then Mexican troops helping in New Orleans, Dutch troops, Dutch AWACS, Dutch F-16s used to patrol the U.S. like we didn't have the forces, are name demonized worldwide. Now, earlier this year, without Congress's approval, Northcom signs a deal with Mexico and Canada to, quote, use their troops here during domestic disturbances or terror attacks. This is all being prepared, and we're going into global receivership, and that is Plan B, which will fail as well. And listen, the New World Order failed a big test. They thought they could get their bailout yesterday. That failed, so they plunged the market $1.2 trillion. It's just amazing. Okay, we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, in 1 minute. This is mainstream now. The New World Order, mainline people know it was true, know we're right. People now know we told them the truth. I don't see how the New World Order is going to get away with this when even mainline TV is doing shows about it. Colonel Roberts?
Well, it's absolutely incredible. It's almost insulting that we have several things going on in the world. If you get on the internet and you look at news sources overseas and you see what's really going on in the world, and you can start putting all these things together, then you go back to our own news sources, and it's all been censored out. All the news that's fit to print according to them. And so the American public out here that only watches the 3 or 4 main networks or listens to 2 or 3 places on radio, they don't get the picture of what's going on. So obviously, if it's not in that 2-second blurb up there on TV, it didn't happen. And you go to talk to these people, as you and I do, and a lot of your listeners do, and we say, look, did you hear about this? This is what's going down. It's already happened. And they look at it and say, no, that can't be. It couldn't happen here. Couldn't happen in this country. I don't know how many times I've heard that it can't happen in this country. And yet it's been happening incrementally for a long time. Now, that's called Fabian socialism. Fabian socialism is you take a society or a country one little step at a time. You don't go kicking the door in and rush in with all your guns and shoot the place up. And that's what they've been doing. They've been doing it in the legislature, they've been doing it in the UN, and they've been doing it on the local level with a lot of your cities getting away with things that are totally unconstitutional, such as taking private property away from somebody so they can build a hotel on it because it generates more property tax, that sort of thing. And then turning around and our courts back up the illegal operations of your local governments. So we've got a court renegade system out there that's gone amok. We've got a Supreme Court that is a toss-up. It's a roulette wheel. You never know where that thing's going to land. We've got a federal government right now made up of nothing but special interest groups like this giant Portuguese man-of-war that has all these different tentacles of different links that hang down. And they all have their own agendas, and they're all using the same power of our money against us. And it's all coming home to roost as we speak.
Let's go back to Colonel Craig Roberts to talk about the really serious issues of the criminal banking system trying to bankrupt the United States. When we're getting into martial law, they want to use the military and police. They've tried to train them. They've got the microwave guns, the sound cannons. They've got a certain percentage that'll do it, but a lot of them are waking up now. And so the federal government's openly said, we will use foreigners, but not just Mexican, Canadian, UN troops, as they've stated publicly. We've given the evidence of that earlier. Now, but I want to recap that, Colonel Roberts, because a lot of folks just now joined us. What about the fact that they're hiring all these illegal aliens for the Army? What about the fact they're hiring aggravated felons for the military? I mean, that's all admitted. So they're also doing what Stalin did there. Break all that down for us.
When you have to resort to taking people who are, known criminals, have felony records, and if you have to take people who aren't even Americans, that that they come across the border illegally, and you end up putting them in the military, then that's an indicator you've got a serious problem with your retention and with your strength. During the Vietnam War, they had to resort to the draft, and we had Canadians that came across and joined the Marines and served with us with great distinction. We had But when I went to boot camp in Los Angeles, I was on a Greyhound bus where there was 3 of us, I think, that did not have what was known as the choice, and the choice was from a judge that you're going to go to the state penitentiary at Chino or you're going to join the Marine Corps. The judge gave these guys, and they elected joining the Marine Corps, most of them East L.A. street gang type guys, and they ended up joining the Marine Corps and going to boot camp. So the precedent had already been set. We call it the dirty dozen mindset. You go to the prison, you give these guys a chance to get out of prison to go die for their country type deal. Well, when we start doing that, that's an indicator that, A, we don't have enough of our own people enlisting or re-enlisting to maintain the troop levels we want, or B, there's something else afoot that kind of stinks, and that could be a situation where we need to get people in that owe us more than they owe anybody else, so they're going to do what we tell them to do no matter what. And those are the ones I would be afraid of. Those are the ones who might be ordered to shoot Americans at a roadblock and do so.